Expediting the sales process.
What you need to be able to do as a sales manager is to have a solid handle on closing ratios, how long someone's been in the pipeline, when you expect it to finish, what are the percentages, when do I have to go out in the field and help you, okay? Do it a couple of times with people. Don't always be closing the sale, because then they're dependent upon you. So here's the other one. If you don't have a sales process, you can't expedite it.
Right.
So I go back to the methodology again. You have to have a sales methodology, and part of your job, it's kind of like one of our clients does a wonderful job in consulting, and their specialty is speed to market. Now, what speed to market means, for example, they did a project with the naval air folks. They took the training time down and knocked months off it. Now, what that meant was that the product is the pilot, speed to market. In other words, the faster you can get the sale closed,
right,
the more money you're going to have. What you don't want is, you don't want this thing to be hanging out there for several years. I asked in the hall one of our salespeople before I came in here. I said, Steve, where are you with such and such? What step are you in? How long have you been in there with them? When do you expect it to close? We're developing software now, we call SAM, that we're going to have on the market in the not-too-distant future, which actually tracks all this inside the impact selling system. We're going to be integrating customer prospect management with our sales system to expedite the sales process.
Another step for what sales managers should be doing, holding the salespeople accountable.
Yes, being held answerable for their own actions and their own results. There are far too many organizations, in my opinion, where there's fuzzy accountability. Remember, we talked one time in one of the broadcasts about orientation. Okay?
Right.
The orientation should include things like, how many active prospects should you have? What happens if you go 3 months without hitting your sales goal? See, if I'm able to keep track of the leads and keep track of the expediting of this thing, I should be able to hold people accountable. The monthly reporting that we teach people to do in our symposiums teaches them how to keep these things between the lines. Because having trained hundreds and hundreds of sales managers, the two big things are there's no sales methodology and there's very little accountability.
So in a sense, you're saying that if you do it right, you can really manage the sales process much the same way the bean counters.
There's no question about it.
Do what they do.
And you know what? To do less than that is an abdication, because I'm going to tell you, it's as old as the hills. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And you can do that with the sales function, if you'll take the time to do it.
Sales managers should also be interacting with other department leaders.
Yes. This goes back to not getting immersed in these other things, but working with the people who manage other departments to make sure they can get it done. By the same token, if they give you a message to tell the sales force, you need to tell them that. I wrote a book 2 years ago called The New Science of Sales and Persuasion. And one of the things that we talked about in that book was, as you sit at the table and you've got operations, customer service, HR, PR, chief operating officer, accounting, marketing, whatever, all these departments, and the sales manager or VP of sales is seated here. Does he or she have an equal seat at the table? And if you do not have an equal seat at the table, you've got a problem.
And a decision.
Yeah.
Okay. Monitoring lead flow, which seems to me an extension of what you're already talking about, which is managing the sales process.
But what I'm talking about is before the sales process. How many leads are you getting? Sales is driven by leads. That was the old Hollywood or Broadway play that later became a movie, Glengarry Glen Ross.
Seen it. Brutal.
Brutal. Now, you remember that Jack Lemmon played the Machine, the Machine Levine. And the Machine Levine was a salesperson who was past his prime. And he wanted to get back to where he was, and he couldn't do it. And they had the leads provided. Remember, Alec Baldwin was the manager, okay? And he came in and made the presentation, and he said to Jack Lemmon when he's standing there, "Hey, you, sit down." He went to get some coffee. He said, "Coffee's for closers." I mean, this was really old school stuff. That's why I said it was brutal, yeah. Now, but here's the truth. He actually stole the leads. was going to sell the leads. Whether it's Glengarry Glen Ross, I mean, listen to me. The name of the game in sales is how many leads you have and how high your conversion ratio is on those leads. Success in sales is driven by lead flow. More people have failed in sales because of a lack of qualified leads than for any other reason.
Really?
What happens if you have no one to talk to or they're the wrong people? Let me give you an example. A client called us today and said that they were talking about a lead generation company. And now we may have an observer from a lead generation company, so get ready to email me and blast me. The question was, do we have one we could recommend, or what do we think about it? Several years ago, when it was really rough in the marketplace, we actually used a lead generation company. They were to call and make an appointment for our person to call them and to set up the time to go see them. And we operate all over the country and around the world, as you know. So a sales call for us is very expensive. We did this for about 30 days. And what happened was our people would call and the person never remembered talking to anybody. They didn't talk to anybody in the first place. The lead generation company misrepresented what it was because they didn't understand it.
So it was a list of cold calls.
Yeah, it was cold calls because people don't like the cold call, and I don't recommend cold calling anyway. It's just that I was spending thousands of dollars a month on this lead generation because I'm convinced that the name of the game is lead generation. Now, we can do a seminar on that, or we can do a webinar on that. We have got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 ways that we can teach people to prospect for business.
We'll do that.
Because it's so important. That's what drives success. And that lead generation is a big thing for sales managers.
And as we get to our final 2 steps of what the sales managers should really be doing with their time instead of being distracted, analyzing sales data.
Yes. Looking at the macro numbers. I just went through and did a 5-year study of where our top customers came from, who they were, how we got them. In other words, and then what I want to do is I want to clone those successful methodologies. And I'm going to tell you 2 things. Number one, I don't care how long you've been doing it or whatever it is, you will be surprised at what you'll see. But I will also tell you that you'll see a triangle that goes like this, that a minority of your customers give you a majority of your revenue. And you've got a lot of people down here that don't generate as much. But the interesting question is, sometimes they're the profitable business because you got the net. Okay? Yeah. So maybe we could talk about that. But what I'm going to tell you is that's the process, this prospect analyzing data about the organization.
And finally, field coaching.
Field coaching, getting out in the field. You know, I spent 14 years as a college football coach. I can't imagine how the team would have performed if we gave them a lecture at 3 o'clock, told them to go out to practice on their own, nobody doing anything with it, and at 6 o'clock they come back in and we go play on Saturday. You're playing Russian roulette with these people out there in the field, and if you're not field coaching because you're caught up in this administrative work or the operational issues, I'm not saying you don't do any of those. That's necessary. But don't let it be a preponderance of your time.
So these are the steps to take to avoid being in a management pitfall as a sales manager.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for joining the Sales Buzz. This has been a Brooks Group production.